When people think about the Titanic, they often imagine grand chandeliers, fine dining, and elegant music. But for most of the passengers, especially those in third class, life was much simpler. Instead of fancy dinners, they got metal spoons and hot food like boiled potatoes or cabbage. It wasn't luxurious, but it was much better than many of them were used to. If you bought a third-class ticket for the Titanic, you weren't expecting luxury. You were just hoping for a bed, a solid floor, and food that wasn't alive. Many had heard horror stories of steerage travel, dark rooms packed with people, no air, and more rats than spoons. So when third-class passengers stepped into the dining room on F deck, they were surprised. It didn't smell bad. It didn't look dirty. There were real wooden tables and actual chairs. The white walls were clean, the electric lights were bright, and the floor was tiled neatly. It felt respectable. The dining area was long and had many tables and benches. It looked like a school cafeteria, just without the blackboard and with a lot more luggage in different languages. The tables were bolted to the floor so they wouldn't move if the ship rocked. Overhead, the electric lights gave a steady glow. Candles stuck into turnips here. Many passengers had never seen electric lights before. They had read about them in newspapers, but now they were sitting under them, eating food and pretending this was normal. The third-class dining room didn't offer menus. You didn't choose what you wanted. Instead, meals were served at set times by stewards. These stewards didn't yell or look down on you. They served you kindly, and you sat at a table with other immigrants from different countries. There wasn't music or wine, and the bread was hard, but there was something wonderful about it. For once, you were treated with dignity. You weren't just cargo, you were a person, a guest. You might have expected third class to be dirty or crowded, but instead, it felt clean and organized. You'd expect leaks or men selling turnips from their coats. But what you found was better than what many people had at home. Most people in third class came from poor backgrounds. This dining room was warmer, safer, and cleaner than their kitchens back home. And it had more potatoes than an Irish farmhouse dot. There were no napkins or wine glasses. But people still felt proud. You'd sit on a long bench, elbow to elbow with strangers. A Swedish man might nod at you. A Sicilian woman might say a prayer. Over the bread, a child might play with a spoon bigger than their arm. This was not luxury, but it was order and hope. It was warmth, light, and human kindness. Meals were served on time. People shared space. The food was simple, but filled your stomach. For many, this dining room felt like they had already arrived in a better life even if they hadn't reached America yet. Now, with over 700 people in third class, feeding everyone at once wasn't possible, so meals happened in shifts. There were no printed schedules, no bells ringing. People just knew when it was their turn, like birds knowing when to fly south. You'd hear plates clinking and someone would say, "It's our turn." That was your cue. You'd hurry to find a seat and eat. There were 3 types of diners: the early birds, the middle wave, and the stragglers. The early birds got the best deal. Their bread was soft, the stew was hot, and everything looked fresh. They moved quickly and efficiently, knowing time was short. The middle group, which most people ended up in, got lukewarm stew, wobbly chairs, and bread that was starting to dry out. They joked that it built character. Then there were the stragglers, the last ones. They got stew that looked like dishwater and bread surrounded by crumbs. Still, no one really complained. People in third class were grateful, even with short meal times. Shared utensils and mystery meat. They felt lucky. Meals were served. Food was warm. For many immigrants, it was the most regular and kind service they had ever received. Once you were done, you clean your spot and let the next group in. Like runners passing a baton, only this race was powered by potatoes. The next morning came early. Light came from somewhere, and someone's baby was already crying. You rubbed your clothes flat, which counted as getting dressed, and followed the smell of breakfast. There were no bells or butlers. A steward nodded at you like he was saying, "Yes, this food is probably edible." You sat down and looked at what was served. Breakfast was porridge, thick and gooey, like warm paste. But it was filling. No one asked what grain it was. It was hot, and that was enough. There was also bread. It wasn't fresh, but it held together. Well, a pat of margarine came with it. It pretended to be butter, but no one was fooled. Then came the tea, strong, hot, and bitter. It came in a tin cup and was more about keeping warm than tasting good. If you were lucky, your table got marmalade, a sweet treat that felt like sunshine in a jar. That jar was guarded like treasure. There were no eggs or bacon, no sausages or fruit, but still, it felt good. It was the kind of breakfast that stayed with you all day and didn't upset your stomach. It wasn't exciting, but it was enough. By midday, your breakfast has settled in. Your stomach starts to nudge you again. It's time for dinner, not what we now call dinner, but what Edwardians called lunch. Back then, meal names were confusing, and time on a ship was measured by meals, not minutes. You shuffle into the third-class dining saloon again, part of a later group. It's hard to tell what time it really is, but you know it's time to eat. The room smells like hot food, mostly steam and maybe meat. The steward brings you a bowl of soup, hot, beige, and mysterious. It tastes like vegetables or something pretending to be vegetables. Nobody knows what's really in it, maybe not even the cook, but it's warm and comforting. Like a hot bath for your insides. Then comes the main meal, roast beef. It's called roast because it was cooked with heat, and beef because it's not chicken. It's chewy and hearty. You get a huge pile of boiled potatoes with it, stacked high like a small hill. There's gravy, thick and salty, poured over everything, not to make it taste better, but to help you chew and maybe keep the food from falling apart. A few carrots or peas roll around on your plate. They're boiled too, of course. It adds some color and gives the illusion of variety. Bread is there again, always. It's like air on the Titanic. You need it for everything. You can eat it, clean your plate with it, or just chew it slowly while someone nearby tells a story in a language you don't understand. The room is alive with voices. Swedish, Italian, Serbian, Irish all at once. People talk, laugh, nod. You raise your tea mug in a toast even if you don't know what was just said. You're full, but you keep chewing. The warmth, the food, the company, it all feels like something special, even if you're eating off enamel plates in a room beneath the ocean. Then, a steward clears your plate. He doesn't speak, just gives a polite nod. That's your cue to go. There's another group waiting behind you, hungry and ready. You leave, maybe still chewing, and wonder how boiled potatoes can be this satisfying. Later, when supper comes around, you've had a long day. You've walked across the ship, lost a game of cards to a kid, and maybe argued over whose suitcase smells the most like onions. You're tired and hungry again. Supper isn't as big as dinner. It's a smaller meal meant to help you sleep. The food is plain and calming. You sit down, and once again, stewards appear with plates. This time, it's cold meat sliced thin, slightly pink and mildly seasoned. No one asks what kind of meat it is. It's enough that it's there. Next to the meat is cheese. It's usually white, slightly crumbly, and has all the flavor of a damp brick. Still, it goes well with the bread, your old friend by now. You and this bread have a bond. You've learned to eat it without breaking it, and it never surprises you that tea returns. Of course it does, strong, slightly bitter, and served in your trusty tin cup. The Titanic might not offer wine or ale in third class, but it will drown you in tea. You sip it slowly, not because it tastes great, but because it gives you something to do. Around you, a child sings, someone snores, and two young men argue about whether this is the best meal they've ever had. From the seriousness of their faces, it probably is. There's no dessert. There's hardly any fruit, but there is a sense of peace. Supper is quiet. The lights are dimmer. People are calmer. Elbows stay to themselves. You finish your last bite. Wipe your mouth with your sleeve because there are no napkins, and sit back. You're not full of flavor, but you are full of feeling. It's enough. At some point, maybe your third cup of tea, you start to wonder where's the beer. You're crossing the Atlantic, starting a new life, and you've had potatoes 3 times today. That deserves a pint. But in third class, alcohol isn't served. It's not exactly banned, but it's strongly discouraged. That doesn't mean no one drinks. You notice things. A man at the next table has a strange-shaped flask he guards like treasure. A group of young Irish men keep going for deck walks and coming back extra cheerful. One Italian says his tea is spicy, which probably means his tea has something extra in it. There is a bar for third class, technically, but it's small, hidden, and wrapped in confusing rules. You can try ordering something if you're brave and speak fluent. Edwardian nonsense, but for most people, tea is the only option, and they don't mind. Many are saving money, caring for children, or still recovering from whatever cider they drank before boarding. This isn't a party cruise, it's a lifeboat to a new life. And besides, when the room is already filled with clinking dishes, many languages, and the hum of engines, The last thing you need is someone dancing on a table with ABREADSTICK dot, so you sip your tea again, nod politely at the man with the mysterious flask, and think maybe staying sober isn't so bad. At least you'll remember where your bunk is, and you won't mistake a lifeboat for a bathroom at 2 a.m. After a few meals, you stop asking, "What's for dinner?" and start asking, "What kind of stew will it be today?" Because stew is everywhere. It's not just food, it's a way of life. It can appear at any time, in any form, during any meal. Irish stew, meat stew, vegetable mix, or just hot stuff. It's all stew. This isn't gourmet stew. It's thick, salty, and practical. It might have meat, vegetables, and mystery. It tastes mostly like salt and survival, but it fills you up. It sticks to your ribs, which is another way of saying you'll still feel it tomorrow. People around you takes it seriously. Some men stare into their bowls like philosophers, wondering whether that floating piece is meat or just a very strong potato. You eat fast not because it's delicious, but because it's hot enough to melt a spoon. If you don't eat quickly, it will cool and turn into something like cement. The kitchen staff, somewhere far below, manage to make enough of it for hundreds. You imagine a tired cook stirring a pot the size of a bathtub, talking to carrots like they're old friends. There are no second helpings. This isn't a buffet. You get what you get, and you eat it gratefully. Before your first Titanic meal, you probably thought you'd be eating with your hands or using a piece of wood shaped like a spoon. But no, you get real cutlery, a metal spoon, a fork, and sometimes a knife that looks like it fought in a war. They're not fancy, but they work. They're clean and matching. The plates are white enamel, chipped in places, but sturdy. The mugs are thick, tin, or ceramic, with no handles and no shame. They hold tea, water, or mystery. Drinks. They're also hand warmers and, in a pinch, noisemakers or personal defense tools. You grow fond of your mug fast. Napkins. That's cute. You have your sleeve, maybe your neighbor's elbow, and the hope that this time, gravy stays where it belongs. The tables are bolted down. The benches are long, narrow, and just wide enough to sit without tipping over. You learn to balance, lean, and hold your plate like a champion circus performer. Eating in third class is a full-body workout, but there's something noble about it. Everyone is doing their best. Different languages, different pasts, same soup. You all use the same spoons, and when you're done, you don't toss your cutlery. You leave it neatly on the table, because this is still the Titanic, and even in third class, some standards remain sort of. After a few days aboard the Titanic, you start to wonder who is making all this food. It's not just you eating. It's hundreds of passengers, 3 times a day, plus snacks, bread, and never-ending tea. That's not just cooking, that's a miracle. The answer lies deep in the belly of the ship, in the third-class kitchen, called the galley. It's hidden far below where no regular passenger would go. You'll probably never see it, even if you wanted to sneak a look. You're too full, too tired, and honestly, too polite. Down there, a small army of cooks and helpers work hard every single day. These are not famous chefs. No one will ask for their autographs, but they peel, chop, boil, and serve for 700 people without giving up. That makes them heroes in any time. Their tools are massive pots the size of bathtubs, spoons like paddles, and trays so large they could be used as sleds. The food is prepared with efficiency. There's no room for fancy recipes. No one saying, "Let's add a twist of lemon." If there are carrots, they go in. If the meat runs out, they stretch. The stew. Still, the food keeps coming, always hot, usually edible, and somehow satisfying. You imagine one exhausted cook stirring the same pot all day, whispering to the vegetables like a coach before a big game. They're not just making meals there, keeping hope alive. When you sit down to eat, there's a rhythm that everyone follows. It's not official, but it works like clockwork. Sit, nod, eat, leave. There's no time to waste. No steward yells at you to hurry, but the message is clear. 700 people need to eat in a room made for half that. Time is precious. As soon as the food hits the table, you dig in. Heads go down. Elbows are tucked. Spoons move fast. It's like synchronized eating. It's not romantic, but it's efficient. People do talk, but not much. You hear short phrases. Pass the bread. That's my cup. Was that meat? Even laughter, when it happens, feels rushed, like it has to squeeze in between bites. You learn to eat fast, swallow quick, and chew just enough. Around you, some veterans clean their plates in under 2 minutes. Then they butter a roll with expert speed and sip tea like pros. And just when you think about taking your time, someone behind you coughs or not so politely grunts. That's your signal. Time's up. Someone else is hungry, so you nod a goodbye to your table-mate strangers who now feel familiar and step aside for the next group. In third class, a meal isn't just food. It's a dance, a tradition, a team effort. You might have thought you'd eat with people who spoke your language or dressed like you, but third class was a mix of the whole world. At your table, you might sit beside an Irish widow with 5 kids, a Swedish carpenter, and a Serbian grandmother who communicates entirely through her eyebrows. There was no seating chart, no organization by country or job, just whoever showed up at the same time, holding a spoon and a hopeful heart dot in one corner. Someone murmurs a prayer. In another, a child waves their spoon like a flag. No one really understands each other. Yet somehow, you all get along. In 5 minutes, you go from strangers to partners and to survival. Everyone follows the unspoken rules. Don't take too much. Share when you can, and never judge someone's margarine technique. Languages clash and blend murmurs, gestures, polite nods. You hear 5 different blessings before the soup even hits the table. Sometimes someone translates. Other times, you just smile and pass the salt, or what you hope is salt. The conversations, when they happen, are short and careful. People ask, "Where are you headed? Who did you leave behind?" Or joke, "Do you think this bread could stop a bullet?" You answer kindly, even when you don't understand the words. Because here, everyone is balancing fear and hope in equal parts. That is strange and beautiful, this shared table. On a ship in the middle of the Atlantic, folk, a people who have no idea what lies ahead. Somehow, this helps. It connects you. You may not learn their names, but you remember the Irish boy who traded you his marmalade, the Italian girl who laughed at your spoon grip, and the old woman who judged your posture with one raised eyebrow. Now, you've grown used to the rhythm. Eat, sleep, avoid stampedes of excited children. Repeat. The meals are simple, but they're dependable. They arrive on time, they keep your stomach quiet, and they give structure to the day. And then comes Sunday, April 14th. You don't know it yet, but this will be the last supper ever served in Titanic's third-class dining saloon. That evening's dinner seems normal. There's stew. There are boiled potatoes. Maybe a bit of roast pork if the cooks were feeling generous. You notice the bread is slightly fresher, or maybe that's just your imagination, trying to make the moment special. People eat as always quietly, quickly, and with care. A couple celebrates an engagement. A boy shows off his harmonica. Someone spills tea, and a child squeals with delight. The mood is hopeful, calm, lighthearted. The future feels near and full of promise. You talk with the man next to you. You both joke that if Titanic keeps feeding you like this, you'll arrive in New York heavier than you left. It's not a great joke, but he chuckles anyway. There's a strong feeling of hope in the room. Parents soothe babies. Young men talk about their plans. Older passengers stare into their mugs, deep in thought. It feels like a normal evening. You finish your meal, the last piece of meat, the last sip of tea. You get up, just like always, thinking about breakfast. You hope for marmalade. You hope you're in the early group. You're pretty sure you finally learned how to butter the bread without breaking it in half. Outside, the Titanic sails smoothly through the North Atlantic. Inside, the third-class dining room is quiet, clean, and still. No one knows it's the end. You survive on food that wasn't fancy, served without menus or music, but it filled your belly and warmed your spirit. It wasn't just about food, it was about feeling seen, feeling respected, and feeling part of something. When news of the sinking spread, people talked about the orchestra, the grand staircase, and the fancy first-class dinners. That made sense. It was dramatic. But far below, on F deck, in that simple room with white walls and tile floors, important stories were unfolding too. The third-class passengers weren't sipping champagne. They were holding bread rolls, wrapping coats around children, and wondering how something as big and modern as Titanic could sink. Some later remember that dining room as the last place where things still felt normal. The last place where they laughed. The last place where they felt safe. The tables, benches, and giant stew pots all were lost to the sea. The menus were never printed. No photos were taken of your spoon, and history rarely asks what the poor were eating. But if you listen closely, you can still hear it. The clatter of dishes, The many voices, the bubbling of stew, the quiet words before a shared meal. Mothers cutting bread into equal pieces, fathers pretending to enjoy cabbage, children licking tin cups and laughing at nothing. That dining room wasn't fancy. It didn't try to be. But it was real, warm, human in a ship divided by class. It was one of the few places where everyone felt like they belonged. And though that room now lies deep at the bottom of the ocean, under layers of salt, silence, and stories that mattered. After everything, the porridge, the potatoes, the strange stews, you realized something. The meals in third class weren't just about feeding people. They were about something deeper. They made you feel human. They reminded you that you mattered. Even if you didn't have money or a first-class ticket. History remembers the grand staircase, the fancy meals in first class, and the orchestra playing until the ship went down. But third class had its own story. The dining room on F deck was not elegant or famous, but for hundreds of people, it was the first time they were treated with dignity. There were no menus printed for third class, no recipes saved, no photos of the soup, but the memories still linger. You can almost hear the metal spoons tapping plates, the clatter of feet as one group left and another arrived, the soft mutters in 10 languages at once. Most of the furniture, dishes, and cooking tools are gone now, lost at sea, but the feelings remain, carried in the stories of survivors and passed down by their families. For many, that plain white walled room with hard bread and hot tea was the last peaceful moment of their lives. The third-class dining experience on Titanic showed what food can mean. It's not just fuel, it's connection, it's care, it's comfort in the middle of uncertainty. Every stew was served by someone who cared enough to stir the pot. Every piece of bread passed down a table was an act of quiet kindness. Every nod between strangers at a bench was a reminder, you are not alone here. And now, more than a century later, those simple meals still tell a story of people who hoped for a better life, who crossed oceans for a future, and who, for a few days, found comfort in tea and potatoes on a giant ship heading into the unknown. Asterisk, as you get used to third-class life on the Titanic, curiosity begins to creep in. What are the people upstairs eating? The first-class passengers, the ones with real napkins, fancy clothes, and silverware that probably costs more than your whole town. You hear whispers, 10-course meals, fancy names like peach compote and green jelly with mint, ingredients you can't pronounce, and food you never even dreamed of. While you're chewing on bread that could stop a bullet, someone up there is enjoying grapes peeled by hand and roast duck served with real wine. There's no dessert in third class, not even a tired pudding or a dry cookie. You get stew, you get potatoes, and if you're lucky, maybe a few carrots. If someone dropped a raisin on the floor, it might cause a stampede. In first class, they eat fruit every day: bananas, apples, oranges, and pears like they grow on the ship. You don't get to choose your meal in third class. There's no menu, no options. You eat what you're given, and you're grateful for it. If you don't like stew, your only choice is to eat the bread and hope tomorrow brings better luck. In first class, they choose their meals like kings picking soldiers for battle, and they're served by waiters who call them madam and sir. In third class, the steward sets down your plate and disappears. In first class, the waiter probably tells a story about where the chicken lived, what herbs it bathed in, and how the potatoes were hand-mashed by angels. Don't forget about decorations. No tablecloths, no centerpieces, no little candles. Your table is wiped down with a wet rag, maybe someone's old sleeve, and you hope your spoon isn't still warm from someone else's tea. Alcohol, still no. We've covered that. But it stings a little more when you think of first class pairing their wine with cheese, chocolate, and cakes while your lips are stuck together from salty stew and unsweetened tea. And even though you're not angry about it, the difference is obvious. First class gets choices, third class gets calories. But strangely, no one in third class seems bitter, because what you do get is something powerful: warmth, full stomachs, and a kind of unity that doesn't exist upstairs. You may not have options, but you have community. You have moments where someone passes bread without being asked, where a child offers you their extra spoon because yours fell on the floor. You share tea, you share laughs, you share life. By now, you've gotten used to the rhythm. Wake up, eat, explore the ship, eat again, and maybe find a corner to nap. The food might be simple, but it arrives on time, keeps your stomach settled, and reminds you you're part of something bigger than just yourself. But on the night of Sunday, April 14th, everything changes. You don't know it yet. No one does. But this is the last supper ever served in third class on the Titanic. Asterisk, it's Sunday evening, April 14th. You head to dinner in the third class saloon like always. You don't know it, but this will be the last time you ever eat here. On paper, the meal is nothing special. More stew, more boiled potatoes, maybe some roast pork if the kitchen has enough. The bread seems a little fresher today, or maybe it's just your imagination, trying to find something nice to hold onto. People eat as they always do, efficiently and quickly. A young couple is celebrating their engagement. The boy is showing off his harmonica. Someone spills tea, and the child that lands on laughs like it's the best thing that's happened all day. You chat with the man next to you about where you'll land in New York. You make a joke if the ship keeps feeding. US like this, we'll arrive heavier than when we boarded. It's not a great joke, but he chuckles, and you both smile. The room feels hopeful, calm, as if tomorrow is full of promise all around you. Parents are calming their babies. Young men are talking about jobs and dreams. Older passengers sit quietly, lost in thought, staring into their mugs of tea like they're reading the future in the steam. You finish your meal. One last chunk of meat, one last bite of potato, one last sip of strong, bitter tea. You place your spoon down and stand up, just like every other day. You think about breakfast. You hope there's marmalade again. You wonder if you'll get a better shift this time. Maybe your bread won't fall apart when you butter it. Outside, the Titanic cuts smoothly through the cold Atlantic waters. The sky is full of stars. Inside, the third-class dining saloon is clean and quiet. The lights are dim. The benches are empty. No one knows this was the last supper. You survive on food that no one would ever serve in a restaurant. There were no menus, no desserts, no fancy dishes, but it fed you, not just your body but your heart. The stuff filled your stomach, but it also gave you comfort. The bread didn't just keep you full, it gave you something to hold onto. The tea didn't just warm your hands, it brought strangers together. Later, when people hear about the Titanic sinking, the world focuses on the grand staircase, the fancy chandeliers, the first-class orchestra, and of course, that's understandable, it's dramatic, it's unforgettable. But far below all that, in a simple room with white walls, tile floors, and wooden benches, something just as important happened. There were no violins playing down here, no crystal glasses, just people clutching bread rolls, parents wrapping coats around their kids, families whispering questions no one had answers to. Some survivors would later say that the third-class dining room was the last place they felt peace, the last place where things felt normal, the last place where they laughed. The room itself is gone now. The benches, the dishes, the giant all of it sank with the ship. No one took pictures of the spoon you used. No one saved the recipes. History rarely asks what the poor were eating, but their stories matter too. If you listen closely, you can still hear the echoes, the clang of spoons on enamel plates, the clatter of boots as people shuffled in and out, the mix of languages spoken quietly over soup, the soft laughter when someone realized their tea had a potato skin floating in it, mothers dividing bread evenly, fathers pretending to enjoy cabbage, children licking their tin mugs clean. That dining room may not have been elegant, but it was warm, it was shared, and most of all it was human. The third-class dining room on the Titanic wasn't special in the way that history books like to remember. There were no chandeliers, no dessert carts, no music playing as waiters circled the tables. But what happened there mattered, and even though it lies at the bottom of the sea, it hasn't been forgotten. Those simple meals, stew, tea, bread told stories, stories of people who had little, who came from farms, tenement houses, and villages. They crossed oceans with hopes, dreams, and just enough money for a third-class ticket. They didn't expect much, but what they got on the Titanic was more than food. It was dignity. Even now, no one really knows the names of the stewards who served third-class meals, or the cooks who stirred the pot for hours every day, but without them, hundreds of passengers would have had nothing warm in their bellies, no comfort before bedtime, no peace in the middle of their journey. The food was humble, the tools were simple, a spoon, a mug, a chipped plate, but these items became part of a rhythm, a daily routine that made life on the ship feel steady. For people who had left everything behind, this mattered more than they realized. It wasn't just about staying alive, it was about feeling seen. Even in third class, someone handed you a meal, someone kept the lights on, someone made sure there were clean benches and full mugs of tea. You weren't forgotten. You weren't invisible. And so, long after the Titanic disappeared beneath the water, long after the final lifeboat rode away, people still remember, not just the orchestra and the staircase, but the small things to the taste of stew, the smell of boiled potatoes, the sound of shared laughter across a plain wooden table. Today, people often ask, what was it like to eat in third class on the Titanic? The answer, it was enough. It was warm. It was shared. It was simple. And for a few short days, it gave people something rare hope served in a bowl of soup and poured in a cup of tea. History loves grand moments, but it's often the quiet ones that last. The stories of bread passed silently, a nod between strangers, a spoon placed neatly back on a plate. Those meals might not have been written down. They weren't photographed, but they were lived. And that's what makes them matter. So if you ever think of the Titanic, don't forget about the people on F deck, the ones who sat elbow to elbow, who shared stew and stories, who believed in a better future. Their meals weren't elegant, but they were real, and that, in the end, might be more important than anything else.